it's going to be a trade-off between convenience and performance. Some of the things that I might use a screwdriver for is just like, oh, my nephew has a new toy and he wants me to change the battery, so he comes to uncle. And
Why
I'm
do they
like,
put
okay.
screws on those, by the way?
Yeah,
That's so
I don't know.
annoying. For me, the perfect sack has already existed and they have never brought it back. It's called the Voyager.
I've never heard of this. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Carry the Way, the weekly podcast where we nerd out about all things EDC gear and maybe try to teach you a thing or two while we're at it. I'm Bernard, the founder of everydaycarry.com, and I'm joined by our editor, Mikey.
Hey, what's up?
So today, we'll be talking about all the many multi-tools on the market, their pros, their cons, our personal favorites, and how and why we carry them, and whether or not you should carry one in your EDC too. If you've been thinking about tinkering with one and adding a personal toolbox to your pockets, this is the episode for you. But first, hit that gear icon in the bottom and switch that up to 1.25x speed. It'll be a lot more fun. So
Trust us on
let's
this.
get into
Trust
it.
us
Yeah.
on this. So we usually do a pocket check for the podcast, but this kind of, as I was telling you just before the show, this kind of leads into my very first question and the topic of the show. If I were to do a pocket check on you right now, would I find a knife, like a discrete cutting tool, along with the rest of your discrete digital tools, or would I find a multi-tool, and why?
For me, I don't really carry a multi-tool, a dedicated multi-tool in that sense. I don't really think of a multi-tool as a staple for me personally, just because of the things that I end up doing don't really require that. So usually I have like a knife, a light, and then I might have a Swiss Army knife, which we can kind of debate whether that's a multi-tool or not. Some people consider that a knife. Other people consider that a multi-tool. But for me, generally, I don't really carry a multi-tool with a blade on it and that be like my main tool. I would rather just have a dedicated blade. And then if I feel like I'm going to need some tools, then I'll add one in addition to the blade, actually. I don't think there's ever a moment where I add a full-size multi-tool that has a blade on it, then remove my primary pocket knife.
So you're very, very much in team dedicated knife for the day, and that's your go-to tool, pretty much.
I think so. Not that I use it the most often, but it's just like, for some reason in my mind, I think the knife is like a core EDC item.
Right. And for me, I'm mostly in the other camp. I am very, very much, to my detriment over the past week, very much team multi-tool. We talked about in the last podcast where I had to surrender my multi-tool because I had it on me, because I always like having it on me. I am generally more like, throughout my entire EDC journey, I've generally gravitated towards carrying a multi-tool, especially for travel, because inevitably I don't bring a multi-tool with me. I land somewhere and I need to cut a piece of something. Either like I buy a shirt or a jacket somewhere, or I buy a pack of snacks that I can't open. I'm looking for a pair of scissors. That's the very first thing I always look for when I'm traveling. And sometimes it's really cumbersome with a knife, and I like traveling with a knife in general is kind of more difficult, or even if you do check it in, but if you like carry it out with you in your pockets, like nobody's gonna bat an eye with like a tiny multi-tool, like a tiny Victorinox attached to your keychain. No one's gonna blink their eye at that. But then if you have a dedicated knife, even a small one, people are gonna be like, oh my god. They lose their crap with a knife. So for me, generally, I like having one of the many sizes of multi-tools like I have in my collection, but I always like having the multi-tool specifically because I like having the knife and the scissors, and in the off chance that I need to open some packages somewhere, even if I'm on the move, I like having like the package cutter and everything. So yeah.
Right. So you're kind of optimizing for just having everything just in case at your disposal. But then, like, if you put it that way, it sounds like a no-brainer why you would carry a multi-tool. It just has more functionality in it. So what is like maybe a trade-off that people who are looking to add a multi-tool might need to consider? Because multi-tools are not cheap.
I was thinking of a line that best encapsulates this. I think you are trading the discrete performance and the practicality of a dedicated tool for convenience. I think that's the main trade-off there. You can have like we always say that having a dedicated tool is the best for in terms of performance, in terms of ergonomics, like a proper
Yeah.
pry bar, a proper hammer, a proper Knipex pliers even would be the best tool for the job in each of those cases. But then carrying all of those with you wherever you go is just like completely irrational and completely impractical because none of those are going
Hmm.
to fit in your pockets in a convenient way. So I think it's you're trading off performance for convenience and practicality, because you can, because of the large number of multi-tools on the market, you can have something that could fit on your keychain. We'll get into it later, but you even have those like one piece multi-tools that have like a hex
Hmm.
thing on them, or like a pry bar and bottle opener. If you just need those specific functions, that's just going to fit right on your keychain, slip it into a pocket, but you're not going to carry like a full toolbox with you. So I think that is the main trade-off that you're making when you're carrying a multi-tool. And like you said, multi-tools can get pricey. Like the bigger Leathermans, we're talking 150 plus, 200 plus. The Arc is what,
Yeah.
240? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is, I
But
think, the main trade-off there.
right, but if you're also collecting little dedicated tools, those can
Mm.
increase in price as well.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
collectively, right? When you get one for each thing, like a dedicated good version of something, it's
Hmm.
probably going to add up to about the same thing.
Yeah, and then
So
you end
you're
up with a
kind,
pegboard of wrenches and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're kind of comparing like the trade-off being one situation is where you have a dedicated tool for everything, and
Hmm.
then the other one being all of those functions are combined into one thing. And
Hmm.
you're talking about convenience. I was actually thinking like maybe you wouldn't carry that just because maybe you wouldn't carry a multi-tool because all the other functions it brings, you might not value those or use those. So then the trade off becomes like, now this is just cumbersome. Now I just have
Yeah,
all
I
this
get it.
bulk and weight in my pocket. So that's the way that I look at it, and that's the reason why
Right,
I
right,
don't carry it.
right.
Because your argument kind of has to assume that you need to do all these tasks that you can do with a multi tool. But then for
Right,
some
right.
people, they might
All they
not
need is to
need
cut.
that. Yeah. And then I would say, like in my instance, I think a good balance for me is just like and this is how I've carried, um, in my setup before. So a good balance for me as far as a dedicated tool and a multi-tool, it would be a primary knife that's like a full-size knife with
Hmm.
a lock, and it's just ergonomic in that sense and performant and quick and easy to use in that sense. But
Hmm.
then things like screwdrivers and scissors I can relegate to a small keychain size Swiss Army knife,
Mm.
and I still feel my bases are covered, because
Right, right.
some of the things that I might use a some of the things that I might use a screwdriver for is just like, oh, my nephew has a new toy and he wants me to change the battery. So he comes
Mm.
to uncle, and
Why
I'm
do they
like,
put
okay,
screws on those, by the way? That's
yeah, I
so
don't know.
annoying. And
I
it's
don't know.
always
They just,
those little tiny ones that
yeah,
you just need like a
exactly. So
real.
it's perfect for a Swiss Army knife kind of screwdriver, right?
Exactly.
So I don't need like a Leatherman arc to do that.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, that's why I'm just like, okay, in the off chance that I will need scissors or a screwdriver or a bottle opener or something, chances are I can get away with a very small multi tool to do
Mm.
that. And that's kind of what I'm optimizing for, just like con- a different kind of convenience of carrying, I guess, and not having to
Hmm.
manage like all this bulk. So maybe that's more
Mm.
along the lines of portability.
There are so many options on the market now. You mentioned like the really small Victorinox ones, and you can go all the way from the one piece multi tools all the way to the Leatherman Arc, which is kind of like the top end of the really bulky ones. And we are kind of spoiled for choice with optimizing it. Like even in those little keychain sized ones, you can choose ones with different tools on them, and you can choose the ones that are specifically speak to you. Like you can carry a some people like having the corkscrew because they're gonna be in touch with wine at some point in the day,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think the biggest disadvantage for me, the biggest disadvantage of the multi-tool is nobody is making a multi-tool where you can choose every single tool that goes onto it. I think
Dude, yes.
that would be like the gigabrain option for people. I get why they can't make it to scale, because they're going to have to this means that you're going to have the manufacturing capability to put together a tool and still be as robust as the ones you currently make. But man,
Not
imagine the
only that,
convenience. Yeah.
Yeah, not only just the build quality and durability of something that's modular, but also the design of being able to have tools that are ergonomic and work but fit together, and you don't know
Mm.
what exact permutation of tools the user will choose, right? So
Hmm.
that's like almost an impossible task, I think.
Yeah.
But maybe
Which is
there are
yeah.
people out there that can mod things or just make one-offs and like custom artisanal multi-tools. Does
Mm.
that even exist? I don't know if that exists.
It is like there is a whole community of sack modders. In fact, the main guy is called Sack Modder, isn't it?
Okay, hold on.
Like,
For the people
yeah.
that don't know what SAK is,
Okay, okay,
when
yeah.
you're saying SAK, yeah,
Swiss
let's
Army
be
knife.
clear.
Swiss Army knife.
Yes, Swiss Army knife. Yes,
From
not
from here
SAC.
on out,
Okay.
we might
Yes.
call it sack accidentally, but it's
Yes.
Victorinox Swiss Army knife. It's
Right.
it's the one in red that's been around for over 100 years, and yeah, so
Yep.
people have had this problem for a long time, and some enterprising and creative people with the machining skills are able to put together because the base Swiss Army knives either come in Celador, which is like the plastic red scales that they're most known for,
These.
that
Yes.
one, or they come in the aluminum kind, the stamped aluminum, which is they brand under Alox, Alox.
Alox, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not aluminum oxide, it's anodized aluminum with an anodic
Yeah.
oxidation, which is that what the ALOX stands for. Anyway, there's a chemical thing they do, but it's aluminum scales. So it's either going to come in those two options.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's colors across both of them, but EDCers, they got to have their brass, they got to have their titanium, they want their carbon fiber sometimes, and those are not stock from the factory. You're going to have to
Right.
find somebody who
So
makes
retrofit
them
aftermarket parts. Yeah.
exactly,
I
exactly. So
have
there
some.
has
I've been waiting to do that. I have Prometheus
mm,
Design Works. I think it's
ooh,
like a G10 that glows, or it's just like a high vis thing with a glow insert, and
mm,
it has like slots for the toothpick and tweezers and stuff. I will
nice.
eventually get around to making that video of me like doing that mod.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
So
I do. Yeah, I know that there's like a modding community and like a retrofit community around it, but it's
mhm,
not quite exactly the same as like off the shelf or like made to order, and you without any handiwork on your side.
yeah. So just to recap, there are the main benefits of a multi-tool, I would say, is the convenience and the redundancy that you can get, and plus all of the options available to you.
Hmm.
And the main drawback is not all of them are perfect for everyone because you can't choose what tools go into it unless you go down the modding route. So there is, like with everything EDC, there is finding that balance of this works perfectly for me, this works as a backup for me, this could work as a primary for me,
Yeah.
and then just kind of like experimenting. It does, I mean, like with everything EDC, also, it gets expensive if you're going to keep on trying and carrying different things. But fortunately, many of the smaller multi tools are not that expensive. You can get a basic Victorinox Classic SD, the one that goes onto a keychain for
Hmm.
less than $20, I think, and that'll last you your whole life. Seriously, I
Yeah.
know people who have owned one for 15, 20 years, the same exact Classic SD. Yeah.
Yeah. So even though like there is not an off the shelf sort of perfectly modular customizable option to find exactly the tool implements that you want in a multi-tool, I
Hmm.
think the big brands, basically Leatherman and Victorinox Swiss Army,
Hmm.
they have so many models that chances are you might be able to find one that does have the correct permutation of everything you might need. Except,
Right.
strangely, curiously, one that doesn't have a blade and is TSA approved. That you
I
just
know.
like, no, apparently nobody has that need. Apparently nobody travels and cares. But for
Yeah.
some reason, yeah, you can't get that. But everything else you kind of can, I think. But it's just like you're sort of waiting for the brand to design something that has all those features, and then just hope that they make it and it's in the size that you want with the tools that you want.
I think what you're gonna often run into is you're gonna find something with everything you need plus four other tools that you don't.
Uh
It's just
huh.
gonna be I have the
Or
perfect Swiss
almost
Army knife,
everything you need. Yeah, yeah.
and then I don't need this hook thing or the corkscrew thing or the extra blade on it. I just want it in this particular configuration. But I mean, it's there. Might as well. It's just one more layer on my
Right.
Swiss Army knife. I'm just gonna carry it anyway. But speaking of people owning like their multi-tools for such a long time. Do you remember what kind of got you into multi-tools? Like, I have a very like kind of gruesome story, but I'll let you go first. Do you recall the first time you saw a multi-tool, or the first time you used one and it became a part of your kind of like EDC rotation?
I don't think it was that organic. I think it was like I was young and impressionable and chronically online, and people on the internet were like, "You need a multi-tool," and it's like, "Do I now? Maybe I'll just do research and see what that's like." And that's honestly how I usually add anything to my EDC. It's just
Mhm,
like I kind of think about, is there a use case where this might be useful to me? And if it's not clear, then I think maybe I will just buy something that's relatively inexpensive, add it to my carry, and give it a shot. And then maybe those opportunities will present themselves in ways that I hadn't thought of before when I wasn't carrying that item, right?
mhm,
So I think my very first Swiss Army knife was the Victorinox Tinker. I
mm,
think it was the Tinker. Um, and that one is a really good knife. I think it's 91 millimeters, so it's like a decent size.
mhm,
But it has only two layers, I think. Um,
mm,
so so I think I ended up wanting to upgrade it because I realized I wanted a 3D screwdriver, or maybe it already had the 3D screwdriver, but I wanted scissors, and I don't think the Tinker had scissors. So I ended up getting the Super Tinker, which is what I have here. I ended up buying like three Super Tinkers, three or four over my collection journey. The
mm.
first one I got was the American flag one. I thought that was
Ooh.
interesting. Yeah, so I had that, and I don't think there was anything that made me in particular think like, oh, I really wish I had a multi tool right now, because that is just like, at least with Swiss Army knives, they don't have pliers for the most part in them, and that's like a
Mm.
whole different style of multi tool. So this
Yeah,
one was
yeah.
kind of just like adding screwdrivers and bottle opener and that sort of thing. And when I was that age, I was still in college, and I had an engineering club where we would do some like building and like mock-ups of, like a model bridge or just like whatever random engineering stuff. And then I was also working in a biomedical research lab, so then
Mm.
there's just some things you're preparing, uh, for experiments and stuff, that maybe you need like a blade or like a pry bar or something to just, you know
Sure.
yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Tinker, because that was going to be my story as well. When I was younger, like much younger than most of our audience,
Mhm.
growing up, we had MacGyver on TV, and MacGyver always had a multi-tool on him. And specifically, most of the episodes will have a link below about all of the Swiss Army knives that he used per episode. But by far, the one he used the most was the Tinker. And the whole premise
Really?
of the show, yeah, it was the Tinker. And the whole premise of the
Okay.
show was he was kind of like an everyman kind of adventure action guy, and he would find himself in situations where he had to build something or craft something or pry his way or construct something that will get him out of the bind that he's in. This dude has created like gadgets, he's hot wired cars, he even like retrofitted a plane that it could take off just for a few meters so he could get off of a cliff or something. He has done everything with like duct tape and a Swiss Army knife. And like growing up in the 80s and 90s, he was the guy that was the tool. The tinker specifically. I think he also used the Spartan. That was the other thing, main one that he used, but it was between the tinker and the Spartan. But the main point there is he always had the multi-tool, and that was his signature thing, that he could get out of any bind because he had it with him. And it's like it became his kind of like his signature in the show. So really
Okay,
funny, the
so
really interest. I didn't even know that you were going to open
yeah.
with a tinker, but yeah, that's
Well,
that's the main
I
story there.
also didn't know about this whole MacGyver lore. For some reason,
Mm.
I feel like the only thing I know about MacGyver, well, I kind of get who MacGyver is, but when I
Mm.
think of MacGyver, I think of maybe like The Simpsons parodying it,
Yeah,
and they have like
yeah,
a piece of gum and a paperclip or something, and
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's what MacGyver
It-
can do. I didn't realize he had such a deep integration with Swiss Army Knife. Is
oh
that
yeah.
like do you know if that's like a sponsored thing? Was that
I
like
I am pretty sure
part
it
of a
was not a
marketing
sponsored
campaign?
thing.
Really? Wow,
I'm
that's
pretty
crazy to
sure
me.
it was like a prop master in the show was like he needs something to be able
Uh
to
huh.
unscrew the locks in his prison or whatever. But the Simpsons parody is kind of like, yeah, it is an extreme parody, but he does get into ridiculous situations where
Yeah.
gum, duct tape, and his tool would get him probably out of 90% of the situations he's in.
That's
It's
crazy. So
every
okay.
episode is like every episode there's a multi-tool of some sort, and it's always the hero of the show in addition to his ingenuity. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm probably a little bit too young for that generation.
Hmm.
And maybe if they're very young viewers right now, I think of this as like someone in Fortnite or Breath of the Wild, no, Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda or something, just like
Yeah.
putting something together. But I think
Mm.
even MacGyver is like a verb, right? Like to
Yeah, you
MacGyver something
MacGyver
is to like
something. Yeah,
makeshift
exactly.
improvise some kind of tool or function. Okay, I get it.
Mm.
Wow,
There
that's
you go.
crazy. So he used the Tinker. What did you use then?
Gosh, so this is a little bit of personal lore and personal EDC lore. I think I've told the story a couple of times, but
All right,
when
then
I
we can
started
skip
out,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Just
But
kidding. Go ahead.
long story short, when I was starting to get into EDC, I was based out of Hong Kong, and they had really big Victorinox stores, flagship stores there,
Right.
and I had no idea what to get. And I kind of wanted to cover all of my bases, like we've been talking about. I wanted something that could cut, that could have the scissors that I need every time I travel. And then I just came across this table, and then they had these new models at the time, which was the Midnight Manager. And I really
Mm,
like, to
perfect.
this day, the Midnight Manager is for me one of the perfect Swiss Army knives, because
I
it has
agree.
a pen, it has a light, it has a blade, and it has scissors. So it covers all your bases completely. And there's a trio of them. It's the manager, the Midnight Manager, and the Signature Light. And it's a combination of having a pen, having a flashlight, having scissors, and one of them has the model with the tweezers and the toothpick in them. So between
What
those
about
three,
really quickly? Let me throw
mhm,
one into the mix. What about the
sure.
Rambler?
The Rambler is like the fourth brother of those three, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Can't leave out the fourth brother.
the fourth brother, yeah. But yeah, between those four and maybe the mini champ, you that is those are kind of like the perfect EDC keychain tools
Right.
for me, because they just cover all of your bases. You have a pen, you have the knife, you have a tiny flashlight that works in a pinch, and I think it's like the perfect backup. And to this day, I think the Midnight Manager still is my favorite Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is also lore, but a
Mhm.
long time ago, I had like this, what I considered like a perfected keychain setup
I
where it
remember
was,
this.
I took a Leatherman Micra, snapped it in half, took out all the tools, then I took my keys, made copies, and then I dremeled off the edges so that it's flush inside the Leatherman Micra. Basically made a key organizer before
So
organizers
you
existed.
made the Ridge key case.
Well, I mean, it obviously wasn't as good,
Yeah,
but I made something similar to it, and then I added a 4.7's, I think Quark Mini one
Quark.
two three, right, something
I
like
love that
that, or
setup,
it could
man. I
have been
remember.
a Nightcore, something easy CR2, just like some more random
Mhm.
twisty thing in like a very small, like
Mm.
unusable or like uncommon cell type, and then finally a Victorinox manager. I went for the manager
Mm.
and not the Midnight Manager because I already
Yeah.
had a dedicated light in that keychain setup.
And
And I'm
you
pretty
wanted the
sure,
tweezers and the toothpick.
and the pen.
Yeah.
I
So I
don't
think
think
that
I
was the
needed like
combination
the
there.
toothpick. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So I can dig into my old Flickr account if anyone remembers Flickr and find that
Flicker.
image. But
Yeah, that was an iconic keychain setup. I
yeah,
remember that's also that setup was also the one that got me into 4.7s and everything, and that was a really cool mod with the shaved off keys. Yeah, I really like the half Leatherman. So yeah, so again, even Leatherman, their most iconic tools are the Wave Plus, the really big ones. The latest and greatest is the Arc, but the
hmm,
Micra is like legendary EDC size. The
yeah,
Micra, the Gerber Dime, those
yep.
mini butterfly style that still fit on your keychain. Those are kind of like EDC legends at this point. You absolutely can't go wrong. They're very affordable, and probably one of our first recommendations for somebody looking for a nice compact EDC multi-tool.
Yeah, I find so the Micra and the Dime have been around. I want
Forever.
to say at least 10 years by now,
Yeah. Hmm.
because we were recommending them on the blog, back in the 2010s. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that there aren't really like new modern offerings in that form factor, like the keychain
Hmm.
size butterfly style. I
Mm.
can't think of any. Have you seen any?
No. No, it's always somebody trying to do something fancy with a thick
Mm-hmm.
carabiner, or
Carabiner, yeah.
carabiner, or it's the same one but in different colors. It's the micro in
Yeah, it's
different
just like
color.
new colors. I guess the
Yeah,
design is like so good and like tried and true
yeah,
that there's no
got it right the
point
first
in,
time. Yeah.
yeah, in like adding like magnetic click architecture and like all that stuff. I don't think
Mm,
it really. Well, actually, it also might be impossible, not impossible, but very hard to design like modern, like say Leatherman free technology, like the
mm,
magnets and stuff that's more
mm.
accessible into something as small as a keychain uh, sized multi tool. So
True, true.
yeah.
And do you have any specific tools? You mentioned that you like the manager. Are there any tools you would consider essential that if you were to carry a multi-tool, if you were going to go team multi-tool,
Hmm.
are there any essential tools that you must have in a multi-tool if you were going to
For
build the perfect one for yourself?
Yeah, so for me, honestly, like I don't need because I carry a dedicated blade anyway. Like on the
Mhm.
Swiss Army knife, like there are two blades on here. Oh, I have tape
Yeah,
on this.
they
There are
are.
two blades on here, and I don't even need any blades personally. Like I
Mm,
could get away with just the drivers and scissors. I find scissors to be the most useful. Same with
yeah.
also tweezers. I think are really useful. And on Swiss Army knives in particular, I look for the 3D Phillips driver. I think
Mm,
this is like
Phillips
so.
number 0
Yeah,
or number 1? Yeah,
I think it's number one, just the standard, like very common size.
yeah.
So I think these two are really useful to me. And then I don't know, like what people are using the two different penknife blades
I
on this.
know. I don't
So,
get it either. The two
so
sides.
this is I think last I heard, this is what people do, right? This is the current meta or existing
Mhm.
meta where you have this main blade, and this is the one that you use and abuse. You can use it to like spread jelly on toast or something, or
Mm,
like cut cardboard when you're not supposed to use a knife to cut cardboard.
mhm,
And then these smaller knife in the back, this is like you rarely ever use this unless you need something absolutely like wicked sharp for precision work, and you like this is last case scenario kind of thing.
mhm.
So
I've seen
that's what
people
I've
use
heard.
the smaller knives for whittling or like sharpening a pencil in a pinch, because it's just like the big knife is just so unwieldy and
That
kind
makes
of
sense.
wide. But the smaller one is kind of like you can get your thumb in there and use it to more accurately whittle something or to sharpen the pencil.
Right. While we're
So
talking about how to use a Swiss Army knife really quickly, I remember you said like you don't care about the hook on these
mm.
things. How
No, I
dare
didn't. I
you,
didn't say
bro?
it. I didn't say I don't care about it. Those are perfect for groceries.
Yes.
Have you
So
seen
if
that?
people don't
Yeah.
know what, um, oh, I threw it away, but I had like, I had like a little bag. But you know how like sometimes
Mm,
like shopping bags or like a stack of newspapers or yeah, grocery bags or anything like
mm.
it just
Hurts your
you can
fingers.
grab them by the handle, yeah. But then since the material is so thin, whether it's like twine or just like
Mm.
plastic bags
A
under
plastic
heavy
strap. Yeah.
load, yeah, it's gonna apply pressure to your hands. So then you can use this little hook to hook in there and kind of act as a little more comfortable handle when you carry it like this. So
Hmm.
that's one use of this little
I've
hook.
also seen people like if they're in the bathroom and they gotta hang their coat on a hook and there are no hooks, they use that hook to hang onto like a little tiny nail sticking from the door of the
Uh huh.
restroom, and then
Oh, interesting.
they're able to hang their coat or their bag just from the. I've seen people like really
I've never thought of that.
MacGyver it,
Yeah,
really
that's
MacGyver
crazy.
for
I
those
no,
for
I
those.
and where do you find people that do this on the internet?
It's on the internet.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I have a theory that people are just like looking for
looking.
an excuse to
Mhm.
have a poop knife to share on the internet. That's what I think's going on.
Or
But
they
yeah,
forgot the
so
hero clip at home because I'm a team hero
sure,
clip also. Yeah.
sure. But anyway, that's what I look for: scissors and a robust kind of 3D Phillips screwdriver.
Mm. What about like you mentioned that you modded your old Micra. If you were to create a new multi-tool from scratch, would you go for a specific? Would you go with the titanium route? Would you go like a? There's this thing called the spider knocks where they put a
Yes.
leaf style blade
Yeah.
with a spider co hole on it and then make it the main knife of the Victorinox. So hence
Yeah.
the
So they like
spider knocks
retrofit
term
it into the layer of a Swiss
of
Army
where the big
knife.
knife is. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it sticks out so you can do the spidey flick on it still.
Right.
So what do you think about those, and how would you build like your personal multi-tool? Would you go titanium, or what aesthetic are you going to go for?
I think they're cool, but I yeah, if I had to like retrofit my own and it would be a Swiss Army knife mod, I honestly probably would use like titanium handles. Um,
Mm,
but I haven't really given too much thought as to like what my perfect multi-tool would be. I
mm-hmm.
think I think there are just like so many that are already good, but like you said, it's like they can check all the boxes, but then there are other boxes there that are checked that I didn't really look for to begin with. That's how
Don't
I felt
sign up
with
for
like
this. Yeah.
my Leatherman Free P2,
Hmm.
and then upgrading to the Arc. It's like honestly, I was fine with the free P2. I don't need like all the extra stuff of the Arc, but some people
Yeah.
are looking for that.
I have the P4 instead of the P2, and it's like the extra layer is just for the saw. And how often have I used the saw?
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So okay, so there is. I want to take this time because for me, the perfect
Mm-hmm.
sack has already existed, and they have never brought it back. So we're gonna have a link to it or a photo of it on screen, but it's called the Voyager, spelled Voyageur, Voyager, and
Okay,
this
I've
thing.
never heard of this. I think
Yeah, so this thing came in Alox, and it's an odd size. It's 84 millimeters, so it's not the
84.
90.
I see it.
It's not
Yeah.
the 91 of the medium sized one. It's 84 millimeters. It's smooth or ribbed Alox scales, and
Uh
it
huh.
only has two layers on it. One for the blade, one for scissors, and one for the, what do you call
Combination
the
bottle opener
bottle
slash
opener and the
flathead.
driver, the
Yeah.
flathead
Yeah.
screwdriver. Yeah. I think this is the perfect like medium sized Swiss Army knife, and they have never brought this back. This is kind of like a legendary one, and
Yeah. Dude,
like
even
this is
the
perfect.
like the logo looks weird. Like I've never seen this before.
Yeah, it looks kind of like the old Wenger logo, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think this is like the perfect two-layer, nice medium size that you can still pocket. It can act as your main knife as well, and you get the really thin, really nice Victorinox scissors. And just to fill out the gap, it could act as a backspacer even. You got
Yeah.
the combo tool with a wire stripper and the flathead screwdriver. I think this is, for me, as close to perfect as a uh other than the Midnight Manager, of course.
Right.
This is
Right.
kind of like the perfect medium-sized one for me.
Okay.
So yeah, I really wish they bring this back. If they can bring back the 125-year-old original Swiss Army knife, surely
Mm-hmm.
they can bring back the Voyager.
Yeah, but since you expressed that want and desire,
Yes.
some exec heard that and it's like, nah, Mikey cannot have what he wants. So you jinxed
Definitely not in
yourself.
black
Yep.
either.
Uh-huh. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that so far we've been talking basically about Victorinox Swiss Army because they've been around
Hmm.
forever and they kind of invented this style of tool, right? And then also
Hmm.
Leatherman because Tim Leatherman also invented that style of tool. So it
Hmm.
doesn't surprise me that they're like at the top. They have the best in their respective designs, and that's not to say that like Swiss Army knife doesn't make a butterfly style tool or
Hmm.
Leatherman doesn't make a single like knife that has other components in it. But I
Hmm.
kind of just wanted to explore for people who are listening and like maybe they've seen a Swiss Army knife and a Leatherman and like they're still like, yeah, I don't really care for
Hmm.
those. Like what else is out there?
Yeah, and honestly, we are in a privileged position, but um, these are not inexpensive tools. Some of them can get really expensive. The one I would recommend that I see recommended a lot as well is a brand called Next Tool. I believe they
Mm-hmm.
have a few different models, but they have a really popular, really inexpensive. I believe it is under $20, but you get the full metal construction. It has butterfly. It's the butterfly style with the pliers in the
Mm-hmm.
middle and like a big complement of tools. So it's kind of like from the people I see who are not ready to purchase like a big Leatherman or like the larger Victorinox ones, next tool I see is the one that gets recommended a lot. Um,
Interesting.
Gerber has a bunch of tools as well. They have some really interesting ones. Like the dual force is kind of like a mega pliers in a multi
Yeah.
tool. It
Mm-hmm.
it has more leverage. It has more um what do you call the force that you use for the pliers, that kind of force. It has more, you can apply more force to it because
Like
of the way it's
clamp
constructed.
force.
the clamping
Tension?
force, I believe. Yeah, something like
Okay.
that. It's not like the usual needle nose style butterfly pliers. Theirs
Yeah.
is kind of
It's
like the big, the
like a
hook
jaw.
thing,
Yeah, yeah.
like a jaw. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really interesting one. They also have something called the dual force, which is designed to be better for like a longer screwdriver, like a
Oh,
dedicated
you're
screwdriver
talking about the
arm.
center drive.
Center drive, sorry. You're right. You're
Yes,
right.
yeah.
The center drive. Yeah. So they have a couple of really unique and bordering on the discrete tool category because they're
Hmm.
designed around that one big function that they're really really good for. So Gerber's another thing to look at. And Gerber also makes us really speaking of like the keychain size and the medium size ones, they make those really nice like arm bar, slim bar, the
Right,
cut like
right.
it's just the bit driver and a knife, or it's just like scissors and the bit driver, just like your most basic functionality in a slim profile as possible, so they
Yeah.
make it
You
like
can kind of
EDC very
imagine
easy
those
for.
as like if you took a butterfly style tool and then just cut it
Mm,
in half.
yeah,
And then that's kind of
it's
like
just
what
one
an
arm.
arm bar
Yeah,
or something would be. Yeah, exactly, one arm.
yeah.
And then this like a lot of those tools that you mentioned are fairly recent releases from
Mm,
Gerber in particular.
hmm.
They had what is it called? The suspension, I think. That's like
NXT,
an
suspension
yeah,
NXT.
I
Yeah.
believe that's like an older one that's been around for a while. Um,
Oh, just as an aside, did you know that Leatherman was founded in 1983? It's as recent as that, and now they're
I
like
did
at
know
the top
that.
at the top of
Yeah,
the game.
not
So that's
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
impressive.
Not too long ago.
Yeah.
Um, like Tim Leatherman's like still out there kicking ass. I met him
Sure.
and interviewed him and saw his EDC a couple years ago. It's
Mm.
actually gigantic. It is this giant like yeah, he's I don't know how he does it. It's this giant brick.
Yeah.
But let him stick to making awesome multi tools and then
Yeah.
can't judge his wallet situation.
Yep. Speaking of giant bricks, have you seen the champ line of Victorinox where it's like it from the side it looks like your normal 91
Yeah,
millimeter, but you flip it to the side, it's like
it's like
like a
20 layers thick.
20-30 layer, like a suitcase, a brick of a multi-tool. I don't know who's using those. I think they're
I don't
kind of
think
cool.
anyone's using those. I think that's
Yeah.
just a flex piece for collectors, to
It's
be
like
honest.
I'm gonna MacGyver this. Let me just pull out this this brick from
Yeah,
my
yeah.
pocket. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've seen in some Wenger branches and in some Swiss Army knife branches, they have it on display where it's like
Hmm.
automated and it's like fanning out
Oh,
it's
cool.
many tools, and it's just yeah, like you said, it's probably just a conversation piece or just like an engineering demonstration piece to show them that yeah, we can do 100 layers easy, and
Yeah.
it'll still fit in the 91 millimeter form factor. Yeah, but yeah, going back, so it's Gerber next tool. There's a guy in our Discord who has mentioned his goat tool, which is pretty interesting. It's a little over $100, I believe,
Hmm.
but it looks kind of really sleek. And it's also in the butterfly style. But that also leads me to the other side of multi tools, where we call them one piece multi tools, where it's just like a single piece of titanium or aluminum or stainless steel, and it
Hmm.
usually just has a couple of functions on it, right? It's just the pry bar side of it, or like a flathead screwdriver that acts as a pry bar, and a bottle opener. And if they're maybe trying to save weight, they're going to put the hex cutouts
Yeah.
into it. Yeah, like 4 or 5 levels of hex in there. And little bit of, I guess, EDC lore for both of us as well. Like one of the most popular ones of that. Speaking of wanting to bring stuff back, the Atwood Pry Baby, right?
Crybaby G3. Yeah.
Pry Baby, yeah. So that was like the prototype of the night, like the single piece multi tool that you can put on your keychain. It has a pry bar, it has the hex cutouts, and it just looked really cool. Like to this
Hmm.
day, I still kind of want a Pry Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those exist, but not. Sorry, I think I don't know if Atwood is still around, but like
Mm,
it's very hard to get anyway. They're kind of
mm,
like more collector pieces now. There you can
yeah.
find those integrated multi tools or one piece multi tools, or I think I've even seen it like as solid state multi tools, right? Because there's no moving parts,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
usually also no uh, sharp edges either, like no bladed
Hmm.
or edged, side to
Yeah.
it. So those just become popular as like keychain options,
Hmm.
where you don't have to like fold anything out. It's just the shape of it informs its function and its utility.
Yeah,
So there are a couple of those
there's
that
a
are pretty
and
popular.
yeah, they've become really like Griffin. Remember Griffin has those
Yep,
pocket
pocket tool,
tools
Griffin pocket
that
tool.
yeah, that kind of made those popular. Those are really inexpensive as well.
Hmm.
So if you need just something as a box cutter and something that can maybe drive a hex or two, those are the options as well. Even like Olight is making under their
Yeah,
Oracle brand, they are now making multi-tools or single piece multi-tools as well, or utility blades that kind of like serve the same function.
right.
So yeah, so lots of options. So you don't have to limit yourself to Victorinox or Leatherman, or if you're not ready to spend that kind of money yet on a bigger multi-tool, there
Yeah,
is a lot of stuff out there. Yeah.
or even just the concept of when you think of multi-tool, like maybe before this video or this conversation, you wouldn't have thought of anything other than a Swiss Army knife or
Mm,
a butterfly style um, tool, right? But there are these single piece tools, um, and like even Leatherman makes, like for example, like the Bruiser or something, right?
yeah, the older
Um,
ones. Yeah.
yeah, like those are within the same kind of style. And then you see a bunch of these, maybe they're not exactly one piece, but they're kind of similar in that way, where it's just like a little, I don't know, just like this little tool, but it doesn't articulate that much, but there's functionality in it. And you see a lot of these on like Kickstarter,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
One of them I'm thinking of is like, I think Big Idea Designs. Like they make these like really cool, well designed titanium tools.
Hmm.
Um, and then they have something like the TPT slide, I think Bit Bar, those kinds of things. The
Mm,
I kind of categorize those as multi tools, even though they
hmm.
might be single use,
Yeah, yeah,
or like
true, true.
single function, but usually they're not. Usually, like in the design, you can fit like a bottle opener or a screwdriver, even if it's
Hmm.
like a box cutter or like a bit driver. You can probably fit in some other functionality there.
Funny you mentioned bit drivers. What do you think about, because I've seen really, really, really fancy bit drivers come through the EDC space over the
Hmm.
years. Like some of them are made from brass, a couple of titanium ones. I've even seen like Damascus bit drivers.
Oh
What do you
wow.
think of, would you consider those like a multi-tool? Because technically, since you can swap out the functionality, it would count as a multi-tool, right? What are your thoughts on those kinds of like fancy bit drivers?
I'm not one to care too much about semantics in that regard. If I already think of, like a single use box cutter, like little titanium thing, as more of a multi-tool in my head, because it doesn't really fit what I think of as a pocket knife, for example. So
Hmm.
if somebody wants to say a bit driver is a multi-tool, sure.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any, real point in just saying like, no, it's like that doesn't count as this when it should be
True.
this. It's all kind of part of EDC and just like cool gear, right?
Yeah. And I think that's also just to close that one. I think it's also one of the more convenient form factors, because if you can find a bit driver that's just like a thin cylinder, you can just slip into like a pocket or something.
Hmm.
It's much less bulkier. You can just carry a separate bit kit with you to have all of the functionality you need. And yeah, that can be your multi tool for the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and bit drivers are if you're just going to be turning screws or something, it's a
Mhm.
pretty ergonomic way to do that instead of just
Exactly.
like this little hole on the inside of this kind of sharp, weird, like polygon shaped thing that does all this other stuff, right? So,
Mhm. So why don't we take it home? Why don't we make our personal recommendations in like every possible size that's like
mm,
easily available in the market, so we can have like a, you can choose a keychain sized one or one piece multi-tool one, medium sized one, and a large size one. What would you personally recommend to our listeners who are kind of
damn.
like on board for multi-tools now?
Ah, I would say of all EDC gear, multi tools are probably lower on my list of like interest and
Mm,
expertise. And
yeah.
I think this is just because they're basically two brands that do it really well, and it's kind of
Hmm.
you kind of can't go wrong with them, and it's
Hmm.
almost not worth the effort if you can afford it to like branch out from there, unless you're
Hmm.
kind of an enthusiast or looking for something really unique. But I still
Hmm.
stand by for pretty much all of those categories that you mentioned: Victorinox,
Hmm.
Swiss Army, and Leatherman. and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
personally use. So maybe I'm boring, maybe I'm basic or whatever, but that's what I
Mm-hmm.
would pick. So in the keychain camp, I would probably go with the manager, not the midnight manager, because
Mm-hmm.
you have a flashlight on your phone, and I know that that's already a contentious take. And then for the butterfly style, I liked the um, Gerber Dime
Mm.
PS, I think it was. Um,
Style PS. Yeah.
or yeah, style. Um,
Style PS or
wait,
style
no,
CS, one of those two.
that's Leatherman. You're confusing me,
Oh,
right?
right. Sorry, sorry.
Okay,
Leather.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Yeah, you're talking
yeah,
about the
yeah,
Gerber dime. Yeah.
yeah. Gerber Dime.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
so that, and then medium sized. I don't know if they make this anymore. I think they brought it back once and then it's like gone forever. But the Leatherman Juice series, do you remember
Ooh,
that?
yeah. Yeah, those are
That
nice.
Yeah,
I
I
think they did
used
stop
to.
making those, unfortunately. Yeah.
So to me, that's like a good size. Leatherman Juice is not quite as big as like a wave or something you might think there. So if
Mm-hmm.
it's not around, then maybe in that smaller size, that's still a Leatherman. Skeletal was a great
Really
recommendation,
nice. Mm-hmm.
especially if you're looking for a multi tool that will replace your primary blade, or you're okay with not carrying a primary blade because you have a multi tool. The
Mm-hmm.
Skeletal CX is like very lightweight and kind of like best of both worlds in that sense. And
Mm-hmm.
then for uh, Victorinox side, the Alox Pioneer X. This has almost
Mm.
everything I want except for the 3D screwdriver, but it does
Mm-hmm.
have scissors in the compact kind of
And
aluminum scale.
And there's a reason why Victorinox moved from the Cadet, which did not have the scissors, to the Pioneer as their kind of like yearly limited thing,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody wants the scissors, man. Those
Yeah,
scissors, the Victorinox scissors are really top tier as far as like
yeah.
really thin scissors that can get into like places where normal scissors couldn't get through. How about for the very large like toolbox level multi-tool? What would you pick?
So, I mean, I would recommend to anyone, you could just get like a Leatherman wave and you're probably set
Mm,
for life. And it's all
truly.
like, I'm almost like, how does Leatherman stay in business? Like, if they just sell a bunch of Leatherman waves, like nobody will buy anything else because it's not gonna break, and like it does
True.
everything and the design works. But there are some people that want to upgrade or like have a very specific use case, and they'll buy a different Leatherman for that.
Hmm.
But what I personally used is the Leatherman Free P2. I've been
Hmm.
using that for a couple of years. I use that on my little tinkering projects, modding projects, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I did get the Leatherman Arc, and I have been, carrying that, but it is just a little bit heavier than I
Mm.
remember the free P2 being, and like
Yeah,
the
it's the
P2,
size. It's the exact
uh,
weight of the P4, so
yeah,
it
that's
was kind of
why.
like a natural transition to me. Yeah,
Yeah, so I was like, it's a little bit bulky for me. I like the aesthetics of the free P2 as well, and I don't value Magna Cut that much because I'm probably carrying some other knife already.
true, true.
Yeah, dedicated.
I am gonna go with some nice offbeat choices so people can just think about the multi tools in a bit of a different way, or know that there's more out there
Yeah,
than the
please
standard
do.
stuff.
Yeah.
So for the keychain, I'm gonna go with a Victorinox 580 nail clip, which is the only
Ooh.
Victorinox keychain size that also comes with a really nice nail clipper. Very underrated personal hygiene tool, and
Mm-hmm.
every time you need one, it's kind of annoying when you don't have one nearby. Like you have that, you know those memes, right? With the you have just like one tiny hangnail, and then it's just
Oh my god, dude. Yeah,
yeah,
as a rock climber, like I actually need to
yeah,
take care of my nails because otherwise
mm,
it hurts. So,
yeah. So
yeah.
nail
Maybe I
clip
should get one of
580.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes in red. It comes in the nice wood
Mhm.
handles as well. So if you want like a more natural hand feel, there's that option as well. For the medium size, I want to highlight the very underappreciated Cyber Tool, which um, one of the few, if not the only Victorinox in the medium size that has both a bit driver and a pair of pliers. So they don't come in
Ah,
the
yeah.
butterfly style, but you can pop out a pair of pliers inside of a medium size. I believe it's still 91 millimeters. And it also comes with its own extending bit driver. So if you want to go the Victorinox route and not through the Leatherman route for the pliers, that's a solid
Mhm.
option as well.
And I love
For
the
the
see-through plastic scales. That aesthetic is
mm,
like. Yeah,
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
my favorites. Yeah.
The crystal scales, the white
Hmm.
one and the blue one. Oh, I love that from Victorinox. For the larger ones, I kind of want to recommend a Gerber here because I've seen the dual force. I've held it
Hmm.
in person, and it's just superlative, that big hook. If you want to just like, if you need pliers,
Yeah, just
these are
clamp
your
something down.
pliers, baby.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's gonna be my recommendation for the big. Of course, I love the Arc, I love the P4, but I want to give something that's just like, superlative. It comes in all
Hmm.
black. I love it. So those are my big three recommendations. And if you can find an Atwood Pry Baby, sell it to us. We'll buy it off of you. I kind of,
Yeah.
I kind of still want one to this day. I still browse eBay from time to time looking for
Hmm.
Atwood Pry bars in good condition. But anyway, yeah, those are my recommendations.
So cool. To recap a little bit about today, we're talking about multi tools, and we kind of started with the pros and cons of why you might want to carry them. You were talking about it's going to be a trade off between convenience and
Hmm.
performance,
And
where
redundancy.
and redundancy, right? Where on one
Hmm.
option you could carry a dedicated tool for the job, but it's just not reasonable to carry all the dedicated tools for all the jobs if you need that at the
Hmm.
ready. And that's where a multi-tool comes in. And then for
Hmm.
me, I was kind of thinking of it's a trade-off in terms of portability, because sometimes you can have an efficient minimalist carry where you have just the tools you know you're going to need, but then you're caught out when you don't have that thing, and not everybody likes to do that in the world of EDC. So you can add a multi-tool to your carry just to round out your bases, right? Cover your bases in that sense, but you're dealing with a little bit extra bulk that you might not use all the time. And then we talked about how multi-tools are so varied because of the nature of just having multiple tools in them, and how it can be a little bit difficult to find exactly what you want. But
Hmm.
there are options for modding and retrofitting, and also just sticking to brands that have lots of different offerings to sort of narrow down to the exact model that might work for you. And we
Hmm.
recommended stuff from Victorinox and Leatherman there.
Hmm.
And then the last bit is that outside of Leatherman and Victorinox, which kind of the two companies that sort of invented their lane of multi tools, there are so many other tools with multiple functions that are not in those designs offered by other brands that you can explore as well. And some of those were,
Next tool. You can
uh-huh.
look into dedicated bit drivers. You can look into single piece multi tools. You can look into Gerber. Next tool, we mentioned Goat tools as well.
Hmm.
SOG also has a
SOG
big line
does.
of multi tools.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
there are
So there's a
other
big
just
market.
like yeah, smaller makers on Kickstarter, and they're like smaller brands like Big Idea Design, that sort of thing,
Hmm.
where they'll be making these smaller, not necessarily Swiss Army knife style or butterfly style tools that might fit well in your everyday carry.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Then we wrapped it up with our personal recommendations of what we've used, and then also I gave pretty basic answers of Leatherman and Victorinox, and then Mikey rounded that out with some of the deep cut picks, some underrated picks. So thank you for that, Mikey. And
Hmm.
I think that wraps it up for today's episode. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. And if you did, please subscribe. If you're listening through a podcast service and you really enjoy what we do here, please consider leaving a review and a positive rating, as it would really help the podcast. You can follow us on social media for more content daily on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and all of that will be linked below. If you want to be part of our EDC community, you can feel free to hop into our Facebook group or Discord server for more real time discussion with our other EDCers. We do have multi tool channels there popping off.
Hmm.
Lastly, if you have any feedback for us or questions you want answered on the show, you can shoot us an email at podcast@everydaycarry.com. So thank you for listening to Carried Away. I'm Bernard,
And I'm Mikey.
and until the next one, peace.